All right, so when Nana talked about this smart foods, so basically probably everyone here has heard about superfoods, which just means foods that are super nutritious. So what we've found with the millets, and we include sorghum in that, is that they're more than just a superfood. They are a superfood, but they're not only good for you, but good for the planet and good for the farmer. They're just amazing characteristics, which you'll learn about today. So, of course, the millets and sorghum have been ancient grains. They've been grown and consumed across many continents, across many countries, and they were the staple diet in many countries across the world as well. But what we've seen is a massive decline in diversity of agriculture and food. So if you look here at this example, you can see the second slide now. Yeah, okay, just checking it's working. So an example here of the change in relative contribution of crops to our diets by calorie intake over 50 years. So you can see some big increases there are oils, wheat, and rice. And the biggest losers there are sorghum, cassava, and millets. It's a massive changing there in the food diets and the diversity. If I use India as an example here, so you see from 1960 up to recent times, so where there was more diversity in the staples, but you see now rice, the red line on the top, has tripled in production, which very much reflects the consumption as well. Then wheat, which was a minor part of the diet, has really exploded, increased 800%. And now more recently, maize has started to increase, whereas the traditional millets and sorghum have stayed reasonably similar, and actually per capita consumption has gone down significantly. And this is reflected in many countries, and that rice, wheat, and maize is what we call the big three. So let me just tell you a bit more about the big three. They account for 94% of all cereal consumption globally. They deliver 60% of all food energy globally. And 45% of private sector agricultural research investment is in just one crop, and that's maize. So that's really significant when almost half of world investment in this is just one crop. So what we've got is what we call the food system divide. So basically for decades now, we've had the vast majority of investment in the big three, whether it be private industry investment, product development, government support, even the development aid around the world, the vast majority has gone into the big three. And you create a divide, just like a digital or education divide. So if you invest in something, it does really well. And if it does really well, it attracts more investment. And so it does even better, and so on. So basically, the big three have been highly successful. They now have extremely well-developed global value chains. And that makes it a lot more difficult to then diversify and for others to come in and be able to compete. So that's the food system divide that we have. So it becomes more difficult now to return to that diversity of diets and agriculture that we once had. And if you look at the two, possibly what arguably would be the two biggest challenges we face today. And one is the health of our planet, and the other is the health of our people. We know in the health of our planet how climate change is one of the big impacts there. And if you look in this graph here, the decline in yields due to climate change by 2050, you see that the rice and wheat, the green and the pink lines there, could potentially have 10% decrease in yields based on climate change. And the health in our people, you see, we have the malnutrition, the anemia, the issues like that, but we also have the issues of obesity and all the challenges that come with that, like diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And food obviously plays a big part in this. And as a result of these two biggest issues globally, we know we need urgently more diversity on farm. We need more climate smart, resilient agriculture. And we know we need more diversity in the diets. We need healthier diets, but they need to be affordable and available. And what we've been doing in our work, Anitha and myself and others in the team, is we really believe to have a big impact on these big issues is diversifying the staples. Now, we need diversity in general, but if we can diversify the staples, which typically across Asia and Africa are typically 70% of the plate, and they typically are the big three. So if we can diversify staples, then that's how you can have a big impact, because they're already dominating in the diet and in agriculture. And also by diversifying staples, that's where you also make food more accessible and affordable. They're not just niche products. But the biggest challenge we have in diversifying the staples is this food system divide. I'll give one quick example here. And just in a developing country setting, an issue of how this divide has really impacted. This is an example in Kenya, where our institute worked, where it's a drier zone. They used to grow millets and sorghum because they're so hardy and resilient. But during difficult economic times, the government gave maize as a free food aid. Maize is the same as corn. I'm not sure which word you use there in the US. Well, in this situation, it is. Anyway, so maize was not suitable to these drier agroecologies. So the farmers were growing maize, started to grow maize because that's what the government had given as food. That's what they got used to. That's what became available as the seed. But the maize survived only 1 in 4 years. So literally 3 and 4 years, these farmers did not have a crop, yet they kept planting maize. Now, when you ask them why, because it doesn't seem to make sense to us, it's because it's easier. The seed system is in place. People come to the farm gate and sell the seed. At the end of the season, people come to the farm gate and buy the grain. They know they can sell the grain. They know pretty much what price they'll get for it. The value chains are well set up. Now, if they'd gone back to the millets and sorghum, which were suitable for these agroecologies and a lot more nutritious, then they would have had to find the seed. At the end of the season, they'd have to take the grain to market. They don't know if they'd sell it, how much they'd get for it. And a couple of generations have gone past and they didn't know yet how to cook with it. They weren't used to the taste. So the project here wasn't just about growing millets and sorghum. It was about developing the whole value chain, from seed system to agribusinesses, to getting people to know they could cook exactly the same food. And it didn't matter if they used millet, sorghum, maize, or a combination. So it's just one example of how things are being impacted globally by the big three. So our approach to how then could we challenge and break into this food system divide to diversify staples was to basically focus on just 1 or 2 smarter foods at a time, because to break into the food system divide, you really need a focused, dedicated effort. You couldn't focus on 50 foods or diversifying 50 different areas. So sorghum and millets were the ones selected for that. And you can see there's a whole range of sorghum and millets here. Basically, they were selected because there is a wide range of them. They originate from many different countries already. It's not like, say, quinoa that came from very select areas. They grow in many different terrains. They grow in the tropics all the way up through to the Himalayas, to the dry zones. They were already the staples in many countries, so you're not just reintroducing other foods. And they fitted some of the biggest global health food trends. Also, with next year being the International Year of Millet, it's an opportunity to leverage, to bring big attention to these crops. And also the core of this, of course, is that as smarter foods, they're good for the consumer, planet, and farmer, which is what Anitha is going to detail. There's an example of some of them. Here's the examples too, but we'll go a little bit quicker. The millet production, not including sorghum. So India, you see there, is the #1 producer in the world. And then West Africa is a very large producer. For sorghum production, you'll see USA is the biggest producer in the world. And then Africa and India, and many other countries as well, but we're just talking the largest producers in the world. However, a lot of that sorghum in USA is used for feed and fodder, very little for human consumption in comparison. So just quickly here, some of the approaches that are important. is to really popularize and bring millets and sorghum back. It's about driving demand. It's really a demand issue initially. And modern convenient products and supporting entrepreneurs and chefs and people like that, that's absolutely key for changing demand. So, but then because we still have to develop the whole value chains, the large companies are going to be important, policy support. We need more research and development in this. Really critical, though, is that as we develop this industry, we have an opportunity now. We're in a unique situation. How we keep this as a whole grain. Let's not fall into the trap of something like rice, where it's white refined rice almost everywhere, and especially in developing countries, which is a big factor impacting health and nutrition. And also it's about the whole variety selection, because you can significantly increase the micronutrients just by which variety you select. So there's a whole area there I won't go into today. But we have, Anitha and I and others have done a number of studies to show that you can change demand, that people are excited by these products. I'll only just present two here. This is in Tanzania, where there was a school feeding program. We looked at bringing in the millets. We used finger millet there. And we did a survey about 20 months later after the study, and found that 80% of students had changed their negative perception about finger millet. Because what we found is that although in the West we love this ancient grains, in the developing countries they're often seen as the food for the poor people or the old-fashioned food. So there's a whole image change needed. And we found 95% of students wanted to eat finger millet dishes at school. In the India study we did, where we brought it into school feeding, we did the sensory evaluations too, and all the millet menu items got 4.5 out of 5 for taste or higher. How millets fit the more global sort of health food trends: they are a superfood, they are an ancient grain, they're gluten-free, they are plant-based protein, there's even plant-based millet-based milk, new products on the market. And health has become a top of mind issue for consumers, and COVID has impacted that too. Now I'm just going to finish on showing a few products. Now I forgot to time myself, but okay, let me know if I need to close. So here's just a few examples to give you an idea of the different uses of millets. Now most of these are startup, small companies. They're still in a niche stage, but it just shows the amazing potential. So you get the millet dosa mix, the millet noodles, you get the extruded into snacks, you get great smoothies, biscuits, pancake mixes. It can be made into flakes, either rolled or extruded. You can pop it, and this is a flour here where they pop it and then make the flour. So it's very light flour and very aromatic. Extruded as snacks. I mean, I just show here so you see how some companies are promoting it and promoting the health and nutrition values. This is a great company led by two women, and their pancake mixes, dosa mixes. Here's an example in West Africa. So Nestle wanted to replace wheat in their Cerelac and use the pearl millet because it's high in iron and zinc, but also because it's grown locally, whereas wheat is imported into West Africa and very expensive. When they first brought out the product, they had a very negative reaction from consumers, but it wasn't the babies, it was the parents. And it was the perception that the local pearl millet could not possibly be as superior as imported wheat. But Nestle was really wanting to stay with this and try to change that perception. Here you see in Germany, the baby porridge, the pear, apple and millet mixture. In France, millet and quinoa pre-cooked. Down below in Singapore, these sorghum clusters, so it's popped and then sort of melded together. So it's a really delicious snack. Hungary, they've got the extruded millet snacks. In Nigeria, they make Milo with sorghum rather than the barley, I think, is normally used. Malaysia, there's a millet milk powder, and there's a great purple sweet potato millet and quinoa drink, which is delicious. Here's a great UK company, and they use just sorghum in an extruded snack. They call it insane grain. And you see here how they promote it, insanely nutritious. And they're trying to bring this out because they've recognized in the lower socioeconomic groups in UK that the poor, very rarely the families sit down together for a proper meal, and snacking is very big. So they wanted to experiment with healthy snacks that kids would like, that would make a difference. Here's Australia. Wheat Bix is a very, very popular breakfast cereal, and they wanted to bring out a gluten-free Wheat Bix. They tested all the gluten-free grains, found that sorghum acted similar enough to millet, to wheat, that they didn't have to change their equipment and processes. But when they first brought it out, they didn't even mention sorghum on the cover. And when I asked them, they said, well, consumers don't know what it is, so it didn't add any consumer value. So they just called it gluten-free or whole grain. But of course, that's not going to help develop the market knowledge. So I think I'll go a bit quicker here. You'll see a whole range of things. This one here, it's a popped or puff, sorghum. And when they first brought it out, they called it sorghum. Sales didn't take off, so then they changed the name to ancient grains, and sales took off massively because people didn't know what sorghum was. So we got a lot of consumer education. And of course, there's lots of gluten-free beer. There's beautiful non-alcoholic malt drinks in Nigeria. There's beer throughout Africa and other countries. So here's an example. Depending on the millet, you can cook it just like boiled rice. You can make a whole variety of things. So I hope I haven't taken too long, and I'll be handing over to Anitha, who's going to explain more about how they're good for you, planet, and farmer.
Are you able to see the full screen? No.
I think we can see the screen, but it is still in the mini mode and not in the there we go. I think it's working now. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to talk about, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm going to talk about potential of millet as one of the big solutions for reducing health and nutritional issues globally. So, okay, I'm going to start with this slide. This paper is a very important paper that I actually recommend to read. This is the recent, I think it's 2019 the Lancet Commission report, which actually says that you can see, there are more than 14,000 edible plant species globally available, and only 150 to 200 are used by human, and even among them, only 3, rice, maize, and wheat, they are contributing to 60% of the calories consumed by human. So why is it like that? So you can see in this map, this is the production map of rice, millet, maize, and wheat globally. And you can see several billion tons of rice, maize, and wheat are produced globally. 2 billion tons of rice, more than 4 billion tons of maize, and more than 1 billion tons of wheat. But when it comes for millet, there is only 15 million tons of millet is produced. So which is, you can see how much difference in the production itself. So, so that is also reflected in consumption. So you can casually correlate with the consumption of big three, rice, maize, and wheat, is very high compared to millet. So there is a need for increasing, pulling the demand from both side, production end and also from the consumption end, and there is a need for a lot of awareness on millets. Why? So you can see this is a International Diabetes Federation report. You can actually, this actually also have a recent reports maybe have taken in a few months ago. So you can still see there is a increase, the diabetes, especially, the type 2 diabetes is keep on increasing. Among the diabetes, type 2 diabetes is basically, 90% of the people have type 2 diabetes. So that is actually related to lifestyle. It's a behavioral, it's linked mostly to behavioral and lifestyle of an individual. So you can see by 2045, there is, estimated increase of 700 million type 2 diabetes cases, which is really, really, alarming. And also, if we see the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease prevalence, it's also very high. Usually, fatty liver disease is associated with alcohol consumption. So in this case, in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it's not because of alcohol consumption, but it is because of the lifestyle, the activity of the individual, and also the food habit of the individual and the stress levels. All this actually contributes for NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it's also keep rising. And by 2040, between 2040 and 50, it is expected that this is going to be a major cause of death among the liver diseases. So, and the anemia cases also, the prevalence of anemia is also very high globally, and especially in the developing world, it's really alarmingly high. So even in India, it's actually more than 40% of the women is actually having anemia, iron deficiency anemia, and especially after this COVID, all this actually started increasing more and more. More than 50% of the women at reproductive age, they are anemic globally, and the pregnant women also, more than 40% of the pregnant women having anemia. It is actually dangerous, especially during the childbirth. And that is actually also causing a lot of mortality in maternal mortality in developing countries. So now, do we have a solution for this? Yes, we do, because we already have seen there are more than 14,000 crops that are actually available globally. So, which means if we diversify the dietary intake, it will actually end up in a good solution, because the diet plays a key role in all these non-communicable disease, diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and anemia, and many more. So recently, especially between 2015 and 2022 till now, there is a lot of interest on millets and sorghum. And also, the lot of science-based evidences started coming, and especially from our team, Smart Food team, we have produced a lot of science-based evidence, which actually have a key role in promoting millet. So, for example, we recently published the evidence on how millets can actually help in managing diabetes, blood lipid profile, calcium deficiency, anemia, and growth, and also how it can actually provide, what are the ways to maximizing the protein intake, and the success stories from school feeding program. So how actually millet is actually exceptionally really good, and why we are actually saying it can be a biggest one of the biggest solution in addressing nutritional and health issues globally. That's because some of the millets are actually, based on the variety, millets are actually exceptionally nutrient dense crop. For example, finger millet, which is actually exceptionally high in calcium. It has 3 times more calcium compared to milk. And bioavailability, when you see, that is the availability of the calcium inside the body, is actually equal to milk, which means within the 100 gram of finger millet, we can actually achieve 3 times more benefit compared to milk. So the other millets actually are also very high in fiber. They are 3 times high in fiber compared to wheat, 3 times more fiber compared to maize, and 10 times more compared to rice. It's really, it's obvious because millets are generally consumed as a whole grain or semi-processed grain, unlike rice, which is refined totally. And so that's very important. So when we talk about millet, it's not just any millet or any type of processing. It's very important to consider what type of processing that we are taking to maximize the nutrient intake. And also you can see pearl millet, they are high in protein, actually twice high in protein compared to milk, and all millets are actually gluten-free. So, and also they are rich in antioxidants. So these are the very important factors, among other nutrition benefit, which actually plays an important role in addressing health and nutritional issues. So because of this, it helps in managing diabetes, hyperlipidemia, that is a high level of lipid profile in the blood, especially the cholesterol, triglyceride, low density lipoprotein, very low density lipoprotein. And also it helps in managing high density lipoprotein. So these two are very important. They are actually interlinked. The diabetes, hyperlipidemia, obesity, they're all interlinked because they're all actually because of taking more refined grains, and it's associated with lifestyle and behavior and consumption pattern. So when this is corrected, and the lifestyle pattern, consumption pattern, and the lifestyle of individual, when it is corrected, we can actually reverse this. And recently, reversing diabetes is actually a big, target for people working with, non-communicable disease. And also, it helps in reducing anemia by improving the hemoglobin level, and also millets can help in improving the growth because it actually has a different combination of. It is packed with nutrients. It has protein, it has iron, it has zinc, it has calcium, it has multiple nutrients in a single grain. So it actually helps in improving the growth in children. Okay, so when it comes to diabetes, as I already mentioned, millets help in reducing the blood. It is a low GI food, which is low glycemic index food. All the food which is actually having less than 55 glycemic index are considered low glycemic index food, and millets fall in this category. But if you see the rice or any other grains, they are all falling in high glycemic index food category. So that itself helps in reducing the blood glucose level. And because of the fiber content, it also actually delays the gastric emptying time. So it slowly ingests the glucose into the blood. So it helps in reducing the blood glucose level. So in our study, we found like a regular consumption of millet helps in reducing fasting blood glucose level by 12% and postprandial blood glucose level by 15%. And actually it helps in reverting diabetes to pre-diabetic level. And when we continue this consumption, it can even revert it to the normal level. And HbA1c, which is a very important marker of diabetes, which is actually, it actually measures the long-term, binding of glucose with hemoglobin. So in our finding, it shows that there is overall reduction of HbA1c level by 15%, which means, the long-term consumption also helps in reverting diabetes. And cholesterol level, as I said, millets can reduce the, it can manage the blood lipid profile by reducing cholesterol by 8%, reducing bad cholesterol like triglyceride, low density lipoprotein, very low density lipoprotein. These are generally considered bad cholesterol, but that means, it doesn't mean that we should not consume it at all, because it is very important, but we have to always watch it like it's falling in a reference level, not actually increasing a lot. So millet consumption can also reduce this bad cholesterol, so-called bad cholesterol level by 10%, and it helps to increase the high density lipoprotein, which is considered as good cholesterol, by 6%. So other than that, it also helps in managing BMI of the individual by reducing 7%, which means the obese person or overweight person can actually revert, they can come back to normal level, normal BMI. And millets, actually in our study, we found that millets actually helps in improving the hemoglobin level by 10%. Compared to other staples, which can improve only by 2%. And also it can increase the serum ferritin level, its generally storage hemoglobin level by 66%. That's because millets having high iron content, but we should be very careful in selecting high iron millet varieties. And the bioavailability is actually 7%, which is normal for any plant-based food. So which means by consuming adequate millet, we can actually reduce the anemia status. So we also did some other studies apart from these, big three, like anemia, cholesterol, and glucose. Apart from that, we also studied protein in millet. So when we combine the millet with the legumes like chickpea and pigeonpea, it actually can form it can give high level of protein, and it is a complete protein because millet have some of the amino acids which is very less in legumes, like sulfur containing amino acids, and actually the legumes have high amount of lysine, which is actually less in millet. So they all actually complement each other. So in that way, it forms the complete protein. And also depending on the cooking process, it also actually has a high protein digestibility. So with all this nutritional and health, benefits of millet, we also tried to introduce the millet in school feeding program as a pilot study in between 2018-19. So when we introduced the millet in school feeding program, we formulated several recipes, and when we analyzed the nutritional value of these recipes, it was always showing, high nutritional profile, like in terms of iron, zinc, calcium, and magnesium, and also in protein and fiber, energy content. Everything was actually 2 to 4 times high compared to the regular meal, which was rice and the pulse combination meal. Especially when we were using finger millet, you can see we were always having high calcium content whenever we use the finger millet. So that shows that actually, we can actually target, the targeted intervention is possible with millet, like people having calcium deficiency, then they can consume more finger millet to solve this issue. So when we introduced millet, there was also very much, people were really not sure whether millet will be acceptable or not, but when we prepared them in a culturally acceptable way, we found that children really liked it, and the acceptance score was really high, and it was comparable with their normal food. So now we know millets are really actually high in nutrients, and it can solve some of the bigger global health and nutritional issues. So what we really have to, if we have to take any action, especially for the policy, in terms of policy, what we really have to do is, there is a need for, the millet needs a subsidy by the government, like any other, right now, rice, wheat, and maize are highly supported by the government, but millet also deserves that support because of its, exceptionally high nutritional profile and its health and nutrition benefit, and also the climate, benefit, like it's sustainable. And it is a climate resilient crop. However, it's very important to consider the millet by variety and the type of millet for different issues. And also there is a need for, combination food that can increase the bioavailability. For example, if we are targeting on iron, it's important to have, vitamin C. So maybe in the form of lemon, citrus fruit, any citrus fruit, lemon or orange, so to actually enhance the absorption of iron. And also there is a need for, it's not, there are a lot of products on millet, but, there is no use of using 10% or 5% millet to achieve the benefits. So to achieve the benefits, it is important to increase the amount of millet consumption, at least 60% or more. And also there is a need for bringing in a lot of other variety food, other food groups to have a balanced diet. And also we have to focus on different cooking methods and cooking techniques. All these are very important, along with, ensuring the cultural sensitivity to, increase the acceptance of the millet. And especially it is very important to have, create this awareness globally. And because there is still, these informations are actually not available. It is available, but, very less available among the public. And so it is very important for training the, people and on millets, and also training the cooks, chefs, and also, the catering students on, how to cook millets. So having said that, millets also very, they are climate resilient crops. So they actually leave less carbon footprint and water footprint. And often, it is really good for, farmers and planet, because it takes very less fertilizer consumption, and it also actually, sometimes you can see in the drought prone area, only millet will actually escape the drought and the other crops die actually. So it saves the farmer. So it gives the economical benefit even in the very tough situation. So you can see in this is my last slide. Sorry if I have taken more time. So if you see this, the figure, you can see the blue water. Blue water is the water that is actually, rainwater, that naturally we receive. The green water is that we obtain from the soil, like through irrigation or through other methods. So if you see the blue water, rice requires a lot of blue water compared to any other crop, like even, especially sorghum, pearl millet, finger millet. These are the three millets studied for, the water footprint level. So they require only less blue water compared to rice to produce, the calorie, and a kg of protein and iron and zinc. All these important nutrients can be produced in a high level with a low blue water consumption. So it actually proves that water footprint for millets are actually very less to yield more nutrient. Okay, so that's my last slide. So I conclude the slide by saying millets are therefore good for you, which is nutritional. It gives more nutritional and health benefit, good for the farmers and good for the planet. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I don't know if the plan is to round it off, or do we open it for a couple of questions? Did you have anything else, Joanna or Anita? No, this is great. This was really a wonderful, overview of these staple crops. And are there any questions? You can write them in the chat or just talk. This is an opportunity to run by some questions. I have a question. I always have questions. In the United States, in Colorado particularly, we are one of the biggest producers of organic millet. And it's proso millet. And I don't see the proso millet in your analyses. What can we assume for proso millet compared to finger millet, seeing such an incredible nutritional content, and also others that you've shown, kodo millet, for example, with the fiber. Proso millet is dehulled and loses some fiber. Anita, maybe can you talk to it?
Yeah, actually, okay, so that's just an example we have taken. However, proso millet is really high in protein. So it is also having, other nutrients like iron, zinc, and other nutrients, but it's really high in protein compared to other minor millets like, little millet or kodo millet. So all the millets are actually packed with nutrients, but if you have to compare, they are high in protein, and along with it has the same property like low GI, low glycemic index, so helps in reducing diabetes. So all those benefits are applicable to all the millets, but some millets are really exceptional in some nutrients. So in that, when we consider that, proso millet is high in protein.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. And it is a beautiful example to see, an intra-species nutritional diversity that comes from biodiversity. And so I really love that aspect. And that is so incredibly important for the future, considering climate change. Thank you. And I know that there's a question regarding that last slide that you showed, or the second last slide on water. Could you bring that up one more time and walk us through one more time, because it is very important, but I think needs some clarification. Thank you, Anitha. Yes, this one.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Are you able to see? I hope you're actually mentioning about this slide. Okay.
Yes. Could you walk us through this one more time?
Oh, yes. Oh, sure. Okay. So this different boxes, the first box is actually, different grains. There is actually two seasons, Kharif and Rabi. Kharif is actually rain-fed condition. So Rabi is a winter season generally. So if we take Kharif season, which is it's a normally, in many developing countries, the food is produced under this condition, like a rain-fed condition. So we don't, a lot of developing countries are depending on rainwater for their crop production. So let's consider the top Kharif portion. So where you can see rice, maize, sorghum, pearl millet, finger millet, they were studied for water footprint. So among these three bars, the third bar is blue water, which is a rain-fed condition, rainwater. The green one is groundwater, and the other bar is actually a total water consumption. But normally, because rainwater is actually used for crop production in many countries, let's look at the rainwater, blue water, how much it is required for producing rice, maize, sorghum, pearl millet, and finger millet per ton. So you can see sorghum, pearl millet, finger millet, they actually require maybe 2 to 3 times less rainwater compared to the rice. And if you come to the next one, the orange one, it's calculated for the nutrients, how much nutrients you can obtain for that water consumption. So, sorry. Okay, so you need, 10 power 6 per 10 power 6 kilocalories. You need a lot of rainwater for when you see the rice compared to other crops. Sorghum, pearl millet, finger millet. Of course, maize is also included here. And again, protein, you can see you need a lot of rainwater to produce these crops. In the same way, the iron, you need a lot of water. So you can actually save a lot of water, at least low water footprint if you see the other crops like sorghum, pearl millet, finger millet, and maize compared to rice. So that's it. I mean, that's about this slide.
Yeah, great. Thank you for explaining that. That was, it's very important to see this. Thank you. Yeah, I think we need to switch gears here to our second part, but I wanted to thank both of you for an outstanding contribution today. And I think everyone here probably realizes that there are some crops that we need to pay attention to. And I'm excited to know that the Artisan Grain Collaborative, and I might see Alyssa Hartman here, maybe not, but they are also looking into millets. They are similar to our grain school. We are starting to trial. I know that there are some California projects going and various small movements in the United States that look at more of the diversity of millets and sorghum. What I can also say very happily is that this millet and this millet US and India, Australia collaboration has only started with these two presentations, and we're happy to know that we can develop more module content, and we'd like also to introduce farmers of our region here in Colorado to millet diversity, and as well as looking into the integration of these crops in the grain chain, the grain value chain, and the legume value chain, both because they fit so nicely with legumes. So it's just really wonderful to learn more and to have you both as collaborators. Thank you very much for being with us, for staying up and getting up very late or very early in the morning. We wish you a wonderful sleep, maybe if you go back to sleep, and then a great evening for you, Joanna.